Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And one of the big questions here in roster mania among many, no doubt, is what happens to Los Angeles Thieves next season? Where does Huke go? Does he stay on that organisation? Does he go elsewhere? Zuma and some other pros implying they think he may well be chalked for that team next year. And tweeting your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. First of all, wanted to mention this from Rated. I'm interested in competing again next year, if that be in challenges or not. I'm based in North America. Any homies need a main, let me know. If the game's anything like World War II, I'll be one of the best mains. It is truly that simple. So of course, Rated was a fantastic player really for European Call of Duty, especially in World War II. That Red Reserve squad was pretty much the second best team in the game at a time. They could have won a couple of events, just got pipped to the post by Rise Nation a couple of times. At Anaheim especially was a pretty memorable one. But yeah, Rated was a great player. Of course, the last couple of seasons didn't really work out in his favour. He's now a content creator for Warzone, a Warzone pro player, I suppose, for 100 Thieves. And well, it's kind of interesting he's considering maybe making a return to the professional scene. I've seen a few of his tweets lately talking about that he misses the real competitive nature of 4 versus 4 competitive play. And interestingly enough as well, Blast, who was also a pretty prolific pro player back in the World War II days, at least a solid player, nothing spectacular. He's one of the players that people always talk about, was like a great search and destroy star, never really did too much in the professional scene, but he's now a Warzone player for Rokkr, and he's also, well, he tweets out literally an identical tweet as you can see right here, to Rated about 2 minutes later, that potentially he might be thinking about the same thing. So who really knows, but well, something to keep your eyes on going forward, some of these players potentially coming back for next year. Another one, of course, these guys have got to compete not only with the pros, but also with some challenger players that are trying to make a name for themselves. Mohawk is one of them, as you can see. What's good, he gets the, North American Champions 2021. Kind of funny, really, because in previous years, I remember that they would often send the wrong medals out to people. Like people in North America would get ones that say like APAC on them and stuff. But thankfully, it seems they got it right this time. North American Champions Mohawk for the Challengers Championship, and certainly an interesting name to keep your eyes on. Like thinking about what the Rookie of the Year, could be for next year is a massive question mark. There's only a couple of rookies. Like I think Pred is very likely to get a spot from the Australian region, but there's not many other players that you would say like guaranteed to get a spot next year that are kind of undeniable hot prospects in the amateur scene. Mohawk could be one of them, but it's difficult to find a role for like AR players right now in the league, but pretty cool to look at regardless. This also from the, so-called COD burner. Not really sure who this refers to, but it definitely refers, I would imagine, to some pro player, because that's the other tweets that he was doing at the time. 200k in year 1 to 50k in year 2, and this could refer to, I think a lot of people said this could refer to Scraps, because there's rumours that, he was on a massive contract in year 1 over at London, that was honestly in the ballpark of like 300k, I thought I heard, but 200k probably wouldn't be too bad. 50k in year 2 might make sense, because he went from London to the Paris Legion squad, and well, as he says, previous salary cut ultimatum, should be pretty apparent that some CDL teams weren't just inflating player salaries in year 1, but staff as well. So yeah, I guess a lot of players have lost out to some degree from going from year 1 to year 2, with their salaries being in a difficult spot, no doubt, with the whole pandemic and that. But at the same time, there are some players, no doubt, still on an awful lot of money. So this is what Huke says. This is the most recent tweet he did way back on the 4th of August. Being at stage 5 and seeing how amazing the crowd was really gets me excited for the next time I am up there, hopefully soon. Also, shout out everyone I took pictures with. Appreciate everyone. So cool to see. And of course, he had such a tumultuous season. Probably the biggest story of the season was him leaving the Dallas Empire at some point. Then who knows where he's going to go. Well, he got benched initially. Then he ends up on Los Angeles Thieves. And of course, initially that looks kind of good. Then it doesn't go to plan at all. And he gets benched. Then he gets brought back. Then he gets benched again after the whole drama at the stage 4 major. So honestly, so much stuff happened this past season with regard to Huke. And who knows if the relationships are ruined there with Los Angeles Thieves. At the same time, they, I imagine, paid a massive buyout for Huke to get him off Dallas Empire. And therefore, do they just want to sell him? If they sell him on to another organisation, they're going to sell him for less than they bought him for. And of course, there's like a sunk cost fallacy in that, right? Like costs that you've already spent in the past should not be factored into future consideration. But still, you don't really want to make a business decision like that, because it feels like a loss on the books if you just bring Huke in for, I don't know, whatever they paid for him, like 600k, and then sell him for 300k, then you're just making a massive loss. So maybe they want to consider building around him for next year. But does that necessarily work with the team they want to build? And there's been a lot of discussion as well. This of course came out prior to stage 4 when they decided to bench him and say, okay, they can continue to work with him and continue to try and help him improve, because it just didn't really work when he initially joined the squad. And when he replaced TJ, they decided to move him back to the bench. And to the bench for the first time, I suppose. He goes back to the bench later on in the season. But they moved him to the bench and they say, okay, we're going to keep working on him. And, we'll see if he can fit into the squad later in this season. Eventually, they do bring him back. That doesn't work out either, as we'll look at it in just a couple of seconds. and now he's back on the bench again for the rest of the season, with potentially some relationships soured with the rest of the guys on the organisation. So where does he go next year? Zuma's definitely saying on the flank a couple of days ago that, well, he is pretty sure they are chalked for next season in terms of keeping Huke, and Accuracy is like, okay, maybe you just put Kenny on the sub instead and make that work like you used to do back in World War II, and then you do not need Huke at all.
Bro, I mean, I don't want to put us on a spot, but they're probably going to make a change, chat. They're probably going to make a change.
Well, I feel like there's no way they give up Drazah. He's been consistent ever since he's been in the league. Yeah, and Kenny too. Kenny's been frying this year.
Yeah.
I just feel like they need a solid, just a good sub duo. I feel like sub duos are really being important.
The sub duo is the most important part.
Yeah, I feel like it's the most important part of teams nowadays.
And who do they get? Sub
we're gonna have to wait and see what goes on.
I'm a big fan of Kenny on a sub for sure.
Yeah, bro. He was a godlike sub too.
Yeah.
But he hates running it.
That's what I'm saying.
He just doesn't like it.
Listen, the truth is, there's not much S tier sub talent, and you got to pull that out of your ass somewhere. And Kenny can do it, I think. So he needs to
I
go
agree.
back to that.
Do you remember when I said that a couple months ago? That
no
Kenny
good sub talent. Kenny should.
I said that when you get a player like Kenny with his talent, he should be running a sub.
Yeah. It's the most impactful role. Your most talented player.
But I
You're
don't.
running the most
He's
impactful.
good with everything. A lot of people are saying Huke. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Huke is chalked up for 100T, or else he would have been playing.
Look at me. I know nothing.
Everybody's head just turned to Austin.
So the big question really is, what does their roster actually look like next year? Because Kenny and Drazah, I would say you've got to keep those two. I think you keep Kenny for sure. That's obviously a no-brainer, I would say. And now Drazah has been so good for their team, I don't think he deserves to get dropped, even though, let's just say he's been doing some weird tweets the last couple of days implying that something might be going on there, but of course we never really know. If Drazah gets benched again, I would feel really bad for him, and I think Kenny rates Drazah very highly indeed. So then we've got to think, okay, where does Slasher go? Does he stay there? I would imagine he goes somewhere else. I think Octane probably coming back to Thieves. My guess would be Octane on the main AR, Kenny on the second AR, then you've got Drazah as one of the subs, and then you need like an aggro SMG type player. Now Huke may be that guy, but from a lot of people's expectations, isn't really that type of player. Generally works better in kind of the more slaying SMG role, kind of the Envoy type role where he can do what he wants, run around the map, doesn't have to kind of be the entry man in, and Drazah could, to be fair, maybe do the entry role as well and do very well at it, because he honestly seems like he can do anything. So maybe Huke in that team makes sense. At the same time though, well, as Kenny said right here a couple of months ago in June now, explains the type of situation and why it was more complicated than just the typo. We'll have a look at that here in a second if you guys are very new to the scene indeed. But effectively, Huke turned up for his test. Well, he turned up late for his test, didn't get done, and well, when he actually tried to get it done, he did a typo on the app or something, and therefore, everything fell through, and the second chance he had to do an additional test, he turned up late to that without his ID or something, and then, well, he had to get subbed out of the team. Drazah came back in, and I think this soured the relationship really with a lot of the players, thinking, okay, yeah, do we really want to play with Huke anymore? Probably not. I think they felt significantly let down by Huke at the time, and as Huke says, I mean, yeah, by the way, it was a typo. CleanX, this has obviously been memed ever since, no doubt, and he says, I let the team down today, no excuse, extremely sorry to the org, and most importantly, the players, for real, that's on me, on 17th of June right here, and since then, hasn't really sniffed a shot back in the Pro League. Now, of course, he's an incredibly talented player, world champion for 2020 on the Dallas Empire in that 5 versus 5 side, was one of the scariest players right at the start of this season. I think a lot of people said in the first couple of months, or really the first month or so of Black Ops Cold War, he could be arguably the best player in the game. He was ridiculous for Dallas right at the start. Benching him was a massive surprise, and he goes to Thieves, and now you've got to think, where does he go next? A lot of talk around what could potentially happen with regard to Florida Mutineers, because this came out on the 2nd of May now from Crone, as he talks about the Decimate stuff that was going on at the time, but also Huke's to Florida, I heard earlier in the week, no idea if they could agree on a buyout or not, if it was true at all. Now, Huke to Florida would make some degree of sense, because look, at the end of the day, you've got Neptune over there, you've got Skies over there right now, you've got Awakening's a bit of a question mark, but Ogre too, well, he's a former Halo pro, Neptune's a former Halo pro as well. Putting together Huke on that team could be, well, it could make a lot of sense for them. I think they were trying to make that happen, but Los Angeles Thieves could do more of a buyout, I suppose, and get Huke over there instead. So honestly, I'm sure Florida would be thinking about it right now, because I mean, Neptune and Huke as an SMG duo, that could be pretty terrifying, but again, I'm not sure exactly who runs the main entry role, so definitely still some questions to be answered. Very much intrigued to hear your perspective on where you think Huke could go for next year, because there's also been some talk about OpTic, right? Because I don't know if they're going to make a change. We looked at earlier today, maybe that's not going to be the case, but still, like Huke in the middle of the season when he was available, Hex said in like one of the pre-shows that as soon as he heard Huke was on the market, he at least considered what they could do to potentially bring Huke into the team if it was going to happen. Now, I'm not sure that would be the case or that would work, but I'm pretty sure they've wanted him in the past, and it could have happened again this year if things were going different for them at the time. Of course, they stick with the roster and it makes sense for them to do so, but still, it was at least on Hex's mind when a player like Huke is on the market, as he may well be right now, that you've got to think about what opportunities you could potentially make happen. So, well, still, Huke, I imagine, is floating around as a bit of a question mark. Whether he returns to Los Angeles Thieves is still a question mark as well, because, look, at the end of the day, if you are Thieves and you're building that roster that I was talking about, Kenny, Drazah, and an Octane, you're going to need an SMG from somewhere, and you've got Huke just sitting there on the bench. So maybe it's maybe it makes a lot of sense to bring him back into that starting team and see what happens there and see whether you can actually build a team around him. I mean, that team on paper is pretty disgusting. Now, whether it can work out in practice, though, that's a question mark. Whether anyone else wants to pay an absolute bag for Huke, that also does remain to be seen. These are some of the organisations as well that are remaining. Of course, these are the rosters they had last year. So if you guys want to pause and kind of theory craft as to what rosters we might potentially get for this year, then feel free to do so right now. Just to finish off with a couple of interesting stats here. This firstly from round 11 stats. First Bloods in S&D this season. Pretty interesting stat. I tweeted a lot about First Bloods. Getting the opening kill and staying alive resulted in a round victory 77% of the time. Winning after drawing First Blood, overall 73%. If the First Blood gets traded, that's getting killed, I'm pretty sure, within 5 seconds, then only 58% of the time. But still, First Blood obviously very important. And he shows in reply right here, that, like, these are the players that dominate the First Blood engagements. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous from aBeZy. First Bloods per round, 21%. That's just remarkable. But to be fair to some of these other players, the likes of Crimsix and Awakening, they get their First Blood win percentage is very high indeed. Like, aBeZy gets a lot of First Bloods, but he only wins about 50% of those engagements. Whereas at Awakening and Crimsix, they win like way more of their engagements, but of course getting less engagements than aBeZy, because I mean, he is just a freak of nature, no doubt. And just this from Enigma I thought was kind of interesting as well. ELO ratings for the COD franchises here, just to finish off the season. This is how everything went from start to finish, where the players lined up. This honestly incredible, the consistency, I think, from the Toronto Ultra. And you got New York Subliners, who got really good for a time and then they tailed off. OpTic were kind of middle of the pack and got slightly better towards the end of the year. And I mean, this jump from Minnesota Rokkr was pretty incredible when they won that Stage 5 major. And Los Angeles Guerrillas just trended down from start to finish. Impressive to see. And treating your thoughts on all this stuff, though, in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. Really upset the YouTube algorithm. I know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you very much, as always. Take care. And I will see you next time.